guys who aren't intimidated. Those kind of guys have always been around and always will be. Curtis Jackson, on the other hand, has come to understand that he needs different types of energy on his team. People who don't always seek out conflicts, but can get things other ways. I want both types of people on my team. All I need to know, who is who. The situation with Who Kid is when I learned that as a leader, I have to empower the people under me to be who they are. If people feel there's only one energy that I respect, that limits what we can do collectively. Who Kid gave me his truth. And because of his honesty, we've enjoyed a very fruitful relationship almost 20 years. Another person who was very honest with me was Jimmy Iovine, who ran Interscope when I was selling millions of records. Jimmy was comfortable working with gangsters and making music to reflect their lifestyle, but he was very clear that he was no gangster himself. If the conversation ever turned to serious street business around Jimmy, he'd quickly tell everyone, "Hey, watch what you say around me because I'm a rat. Don't tell me anything because I'll definitely rat you guys out if I have to." A lot of people used to laugh when he said that because it sounded so ridiculous to those of us who grew up on the street. We were taught that snitching was the very last thing you ever do, let alone admit to. But I appreciated Jimmy's candor, even if some found it a little hypocritical. Hey, be a gangster in the songs, just not around me in real life. I'd rather know where a man stands and adjust accordingly than think I'm operating under a certain set of standards when I'm not. Some people would say, fuck Jimmy if he's cool being a rat. My reaction was, then just don't tell your business around Jimmy. Seems pretty straightforward. He and I were selling tens of millions of records together. Why would I walk away from that or the money because he said something that was unacceptable in another context? That would have been foolish. Instead, I filed it in my mental Rolodex and went on conducting business with him. And when he eventually made decisions that were good for him, but not necessarily for me, I was prepared for that. Whether you're the boss, a partner, or just a worker, you have to create an environment where people can be honest about their character with you. Otherwise, you're going to build unsustainable situations. That's what ruined Ja Rule's career. Ja grew up as a Jehovah's Witness on the better side of Queens than I did. The only time he came to my part of town is when he would knock on the door and try to sell copies of The Watchtower. A nice religious boy. There's nothing wrong with that. But the people around him, like Irv, tried to turn him against his true nature as a gentle guy and transform him into a gangster. Instead of accepting his blessings, his talent for fun, female-oriented music, they were hell-bent on turning him into something negative. When they got a record deal with Def Jam, what did they call it? Murder Inc. Records. They had an open road in front of them, but they decided to paint themselves into a dangerous corner. Since none of them were actual murderers, they started seeking out people who had that energy. They eventually found what they were looking for, and it almost brought the whole company down. If you take a close look at guys like Ja Rule, you'll see that they walk with a crutch. In his case, it was the image of a gangster. He took DMX's flow, dressed up like Tupac, and tried to rap about other people's lifestyles. It worked for a second, but as I said, when you're walking with a crutch, there's a limit on how far you can go. If the people around Ja had understood this and given him the confidence to embrace his true nature, things would have probably turned out much better for all of them. They could have kept making feel-good, female-friendly records for years. Those records never go out of style. Instead, Murder Inc. hasn't put out an album in over 10 years. And today, Ja Rule is best known as the fraud making a fool of himself in the Fire Festival documentaries. It's always better to empower the people around you to live their truth. When you force them to perpetuate a role, eventually people will see it. One of the main reasons I'll always be relevant is because no one can be a better 50 Cent than me. They can be younger than me, have a better sense of style and a better ear for beats, but they can never be a better 50 Cent than me. Though that hasn't stopped a lot of people from trying. As long as I'm always myself, no one can beat me at that. As long as you're comfortable walking your truth, no one will ever beat you at being you either. Chapter 7. If we can't be friends, disagreement is something normal. Dalai Lama. For years, I didn't like Oprah Winfrey. She's not the type of person, tough, smart, and powerful, you'd want to have an issue with. But I felt the type of way about the things she said about hip-hop music in the past. It seemed like every time Oprah would go off about how hip-hop was misogynistic and ruining America's youth, she was talking about the same things on my album. What actually bothered me was being kept off her show. I wanted to be on it. Oprah was where A-listers would go to promote their project, sell books, move albums, hype movies. I considered myself an A-lister, so how does that look that I'm not there too? I felt I had to explain my absence to my audience. So, as I tend to do, I kept it real about the situation. I did a few interviews where I said the reason Oprah wouldn't have me on her couch is because she's a reflection of her audience, which is made up of middle-aged white women. That audience finds me scary, so it would figure Oprah wouldn't be into me either. I also named one of my dogs after her, which I admit was a little bit much. After I made those comments, I didn't spend a lot of time worrying about how Oprah would take them. She'd already made it clear I wasn't coming on her show, so why would I care about upsetting her? She had her business to run. For the record, I think she should have kept her afternoon TV show after she started OWN, and I had mine. Then one night I was at a fundraiser in New York City for the NYRP, a nonprofit founded by Bette Midler. It's a fantastic organization that sponsors a lot of renewal programs for parks and neglected areas in New York City. It wasn't my normal crowd, a lot of older white people in tuxedos. But I love Bet and respect the cause, so I bought a table. At one point in the evening, I bumped into Gail King, Oprah's best friend. Now, Gail is a real deal, a very sophisticated, secure, and smart lady. She's never afraid of a situation, as she showed with her R. Kelly interview. So she marched right up to me and basically said, "Why are you talking shit about my girl?" I had to explain to Gail that I didn't have a true beef with Oprah. "Listen, I'd love to be Oprah's friend," I continued, "but if we can't be friends, can we at least be enemies?" When I said that, I saw Gail arch her eyebrows and look at me a bit different. It registered to her that while I might have been talking trash about her friend, there was a method to what I was doing. "Okay, you're different than I thought," Gail told me. "I'm going to tell Oprah she needs to meet you. You two need to talk." True to her word, Gail set it up for me to be on Oprah's show. It was a great episode. She came to my old house in Queens, met my grandmother, and walked around my old neighborhood with me. Eventually, we got to our relationship. "Did you say things to be proactive?" she asked.